was once a young man by the name of Desmond Doss. He served as a combat medic in World War II. He was a Seventh-day Adventist, believing strongly in nonviolence. At the age of 23, he joined the U.S. Army as he wanted to serve his country. But Desmond refused to carry a weapon. He was ridiculed, harassed, considered a pest for all of this, but he stood his ground, and he was awarded conscientious objector status and became a medic, serving in the Pacific War. Desmond Doss is perhaps remembered best for his heroism on Hacksaw Ridge during the Battle of Okinawa, where he single-handedly saved the lives of 75 men by carrying them, dragging them, and lowering them down a 400-foot cliff after his battalion was ordered to retreat, as he was surrounded by gunfire and explosions. He himself was wounded 4 times during the battle, including a left arm fracture from a bullet and shrapnel embedded in his body from trying to kick a grenade away from himself and his fellow soldiers. Desmond Doss was awarded the Medal of Honor for his heroism without ever carrying a weapon into combat. Some of those who had harassed him for his choice to not carry a weapon were saved by him that day, and their opinion of him was forever changed. It's Memorial Day weekend. Memorial Day is a day set aside to honor the fallen, those who have made sacrifices for the men and women on their left and right, and for millions that they never met. Not all of those millions support or supported their service. Not all were grateful or thankful for it. And that's their right. Just as it is and was the right of those who choose to serve in order to try and make this world a better place. The story of Desmond Doss and the sacrifices of others that don't always go appreciated reminds me of our gospel text for today. After this, there was a festival of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now in Jerusalem, by the sheep gate, there is a pool, called in Hebrew Bethsaida, which has 5 porticos. In these lay many invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man who was there, who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I'm making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me." Jesus said to him, "Stand up, take your mat, and walk." At once the man was made well, and he took up his mat and began to walk. Now that day was a Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who had been cured, "It is the Sabbath. It is not lawful for you to carry your mat." But he answered them, "The man who made me well said to me, 'Take up your mat and walk.'" They asked him, "Who is the man who said to you, 'Take it up and walk'?" Now the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had disappeared into the crowd that was there. Later Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you have been made well. Do not sin anymore, so that nothing worse happens to you." The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well. Therefore the Jews started persecuting Jesus because he was doing such things on the Sabbath. But Jesus answered them, "My Father is still working, and I also am working." For this reason the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because he was not only breaking the Sabbath, but was also calling God his own Father, thereby making himself equal to God. In this story, the lesser-known version of Jesus healing a paralytic, this man is healed after 38 years of not being able to walk, to be healed, to be well. The man is laying by the pool of Bethsaida, as it was the belief of the people that go into the waters of this pool at a certain time would bring them healing. When Jesus approached him, knowing that he had been there a long time, he asked the man, "Do you want to be made well?" And the man's response, "I have no one to put me in the pool, and someone is always faster than me." And so Jesus tells him to get up and walk, and suddenly he's made well. It's miraculous. But those around him, instead of rejoicing at his healing, berate him for carrying his mat on the Sabbath. And this guy who's been healed after 38 years says, well, that guy told me to do it. And then once he recognized Jesus, he tells the same people, yep, that's the guy who healed me. And the church leaders wanted to kill Jesus because he wasn't following their rules. He was healing on the Sabbath. He was calling God his Father. He was telling others to do work on the Sabbath. And the man who was healed, he was oblivious. He was in a fog from being in pain for so many years. He was beyond caring about other people other than himself after being rejected for so long. Or maybe it was some combination of all of those things. And then the church leaders, they couldn't look at the bigger picture beyond the fact that their status quo, their carefully laid out rules and way of doing things, their power was threatened. What reminds me of the story that I told earlier of Desmond Doss is that he was also reviled by some of his fellow soldiers, but yet he still saved them. Even though he knew that they thought he was a total idiot for not being willing to carry a weapon into a war zone, he still saved them. Because he was doing his job. Because he cared for the lives of those that he served with. The church leaders in this story, they didn't really care about the man who was healed. They cared about themselves. The man who was healed, he also cared about himself. When we are inwardly focused, when we are focused on regaining control that has been lost or on the pain that we're feeling, we have a tendency to lash out. And it's not even always a matter of, I'm in pain, so therefore I want everyone else to be in pain too, which is definitely a thing. This is also a brain thing. The amygdala and the hypothalamus in our brain put us into fight or flight mode when we're hurt or in pain, which can cause us to lash out in order to protect ourselves or regain control. We sometimes say and do things that we end up regretting afterward, which doesn't always put us in the best light, and hurting others in the process. When that happens, it's easy to judge others on this behavior, saying, well, they don't deserve healing. They deserve to hurt. And many times we don't know the rest of the story. I can't imagine what it was like to be lying by this pool for who knows how long, just waiting to be helped. It must have been demoralizing. And I can't imagine what it was like serving during a battle like the Battle of Okinawa and the Battle of Hacksaw Ridge, knowing that my fellow soldiers won't have my back because I refuse to carry a weapon, and then turning around and saving them. I don't know what it's like to have a fellow soldier refuse to carry a weapon next to me into a war that was so filled with battles and uncertainty. We don't know what it's like to be in another person's shoes. And that's why God's healing is not just for those who outwardly deserve it. The healing God brings comes in different forms. In our prayers, we ask for people to be healed even if they cannot be cured. And it doesn't seem fair that some are healed and cured almost miraculously and others aren't. Healing is about more than just fixing physical ailments. We can be healed in the heart, in the soul, in the mind. Sometimes healing is leaving this earthly life behind and living in the fulfillment of our baptismal promises forever with God in heaven. Healing can also bring about pain and discomfort as well. If you've ever broken a limb or had stitches or something like that, you know that healing can be uncomfortable. Healing can be painful, but it's a necessary part of the process. And part of our calling as Christians is to lean into that pain, to battle through it, knowing that God is with us, and not get so caught up in our own stuff that we fail to recognize the pain that others are in, to give ourselves and others grace when we lash out. Because again, we don't know what others are going through. Doesn't make it right when we lash out at people because we're in pain. But it does make us human. And the good news of Christ is even when we are in pain, when we lash out at others, when we get so caught up in our own rules and ideas of what right looks like, when it seems as if we are not deserving of healing, God says we are. Jesus still saved us even when we ridicule God for healing those that we don't think should be, or we yell at God for not curing those that we think should be cured. God still loves us, even when we think our human-made rules are more important than the well-being of a fellow human being. God still loves us, even when we don't deserve it. Thanks be to God for the healing God gives us because of God's love for us. Amen. A couple of reflection questions for you as you go deeper into the message today. The first, what is your default when you are in pain? And how do you interact with others when you are in pain? And the second, how might letting go of a belief that you have to be deserving of healing be freeing for you?